There comes a time in every life when we hit a wall, when we're brought to our knees by disappointment, heartbreak, or that haunting feeling that we've been left behind. Maybe you've lost a job, or you're waking up every day wondering why your life doesn't look the way you thought it would. Maybe you feel invisible. Maybe you feel broken. But I want to tell you something I have learned through tears, through struggle, and through divine silence. God has a plan for you. And I don't say that lightly. I say it because I know it. Deep in my bones, I know and I have lived it. You see, there were times when I questioned everything, times when I sat alone, holding pain so deep I couldn't speak it out loud, times when the phone didn't ring, when the dream I'd clung to with both hands seemed to float away like a balloon in the wind. But in those moments, especially in those moments, I felt a whisper in my spirit, a soft nudge, a truth that sat quietly with me. This is not the end of your story. Let me tell you this. God's plan does not always come wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it arrives through loss, through rejection, through stillness. Sometimes the detour is the destination, and when that door closes, that relationship ends, that opportunity passes you by, it is not because you are forgotten. It is not because you are unworthy. It is because what's next requires a version of you that only pain can shape. That's what I want you to hold on to. Because God, in all his infinite wisdom, isn't just writing a plan for your life. He's crafting a purpose. Something bigger than you can see right now, something that doesn't just elevate you but heals others through you. You don't have to understand the plan to trust the planner. And I know trusting isn't easy when your heart is weary. I know what it's like to want answers, to ask why me, why now. But what I've come to know again and again is that the why is often revealed in the wait. It's in the pause between what was and what's to come. It's in the silence where your faith is forged and your character is built. Now I want you to close your eyes for a moment and breathe, really breathe. I want you to imagine that the thing you thought broke you was actually breaking the shell of who you used to be, making room for who you are becoming. That's the plan. Transformation, not stagnation. Growth, not defeat. And don't you dare think for 1 second that you are walking through this alone. God didn't bring you this far to leave you. He's not just up in heaven watching you struggle. He's in the room with you, right there, sitting beside you in your grief, standing with you in your doubt, holding you when you think no one sees your tears. He sees them. He sees you. I've seen lives restored after years of addiction. I've watched women rise from abusive relationships and build legacies. I've seen men who had nothing but shame in their pasts become fathers who pour love into their children. That's not coincidence. That's purpose. That's the plan. You, my friend, are not behind. You're being prepared. You are not forgotten. You're being positioned. Your pain is not pointless. It's part of a masterpiece that's still being painted. So today, I want you to walk in that truth. Maybe not run, maybe not leap, maybe you're not there yet, but walk in it, step by trembling. Let every footfall echo with faith, because even if you don't know where you're going, know that God does. He's not finished with you. There is something so sacred, so divine waiting on the other side of this chapter. And when you get there, when the doors fly open, when the light floods in, when the pieces align, you will look back and say, it was all for something. It was never random. It was the plan. Hold on to that. Speak it over yourself when the world gets too loud. Write it down, whisper it in the dark. God has a plan for me. There was a season in my life when everything I had hoped for seemed just out of reach. I had dreams, I had ambition, I had the passion to match, but no matter how hard I tried, it felt like the doors I knocked on wouldn't open, not just doors in my career or in my personal life, but doors in my spirit. There were days I cried in silence, wondering what I was doing wrong, wondering if the universe had somehow forgotten about me. I want to speak to you today if you've ever been in that place of confusion, that place of feeling stuck, that place where you're doing all the right things, but nothing seems to be moving. I want you to hear this loud and clear. Your delays are not denials, they are divine detours. See, sometimes we are so focused on the destination that we forget God is more interested in the journey, the development, the shaping, the molding. When I look back on my life, on the countless rejections, the lost opportunities, the relationships that didn't work out, I realize now none of it was meant to destroy me. It was meant to redirect me, to protect me from things I couldn't see, and to prepare me for blessings that were too big for who I was at the time. I'll never forget the day I didn't get a job I thought was mine. I had put everything into that moment. I had prepared, I had prayed, and I just knew that it was my breakthrough. But when the call came and the answer was no, I fell apart. I couldn't understand it. I kept asking, why not me? What did I miss? But what I didn't know then, and what I thank God for now, is that no made space for a much bigger yes that was coming down the road. One I never saw coming, one I wasn't even asking for. We don't always get to see the blueprint. That's the part that challenges us most, because we live in a world that moves fast, and we want answers now. But faith requires you to trust what you can't. Faith says, even though it doesn't make sense right now, I believe there's a reason. I believe there's something better. I believe I'm being guided, even in the dark. That's what walking with God looks like. It's not just about believing when everything is working. It's about still standing when everything feels like it's falling apart, still holding on when all you have is a whisper of hope. What I've come to understand is that some of the greatest blessings in our lives come wrapped in discipline. Sometimes the very thing you're crying about today is what you'll be thanking God for tomorrow. I want you to pause and think about that, because what if the delay you're facing right now is actually saving you from something you can't yet comprehend? What if God is protecting your peace? What if He's keeping you hidden until your character matches your calling? What if He's creating space in your life, not to punish you but to preserve you? One of the most painful yet powerful lessons I've learned is that not every opportunity is a blessing. Not every relationship is meant to stay. Not every dream is meant to be fulfilled on your timeline. And sometimes what we see as a setback is actually divine protection. We can only see a corner of the puzzle, but God sees the whole masterpiece. He knows what's ahead. He knows who you'll become, and His plan for you. Oh, it's rich, it's deep, it's bigger than you can even imagine. But He needs you to trust that every detour, every delay, every unanswered prayer is not rejection, it's redirection. Now let me be real with you. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean you won't grieve. You will, because letting go of what we thought was right for us isn't easy. But I want you to know that you're not alone in that pain. You're not alone in the silence. God is with you, right there in the waiting, right there in the confusion. He hasn't turned His back on you. In fact, He's closer than ever, whispering, just trust me, I'm doing something you can't see yet. And when that day comes, because it will come, when things start to align, when the doors begin to open, when the pieces of your life suddenly start to make sense, you will look back and say, I see it now. Every no led me here. Every delay was a divine setup for something great. You'll realize you were never forgotten. You were being positioned gently, intentionally, divinely. Sometimes we think if we're walking in God's plan, everything will feel light and joyful. We think it'll be smooth, like gliding down a sunlit path, every step sure and certain. But let me tell you something I've come to know. Just because it hurts doesn't mean you're off course. Just because it aches doesn't mean God's not in it, because more often than not, God's greatest work happens in the most painful places, the places we try to run from, the nights we cry ourselves to sleep, the seasons where it feels like we've lost everything we thought we needed. What I've discovered again and again is that pain is not the end of your story. It's the passage, the turning, the fire that refines you and strips away everything that can't go with you into the next chapter. There was a time I thought pain was a punishment, a consequence, that maybe if I had prayed harder or made different choices, I wouldn't be hurting so deeply. But God doesn't use pain to destroy us. He uses it to deepen us, to open us, to teach us how to surrender. And Lord knows that's a hard lesson, because we like control, we like answers, we want to know what's coming next. But God's plan often starts with brokenness. Not to break you permanently, but to break open the shell that's keeping you from becoming the person you were born to be. Think about it. When you plant a seed in the ground, it has to be buried before it can bloom. It has to go through darkness before it ever sees the light. That seed doesn't look like much at first. It's small, it's hidden, but deep in the soil, something powerful is happening. That's what pain does. It buries us temporarily, but in that soil, in that silence, transformation is taking place. And when you finally push through the dirt and break into the sunlight again, you don't just come back, you bloom, you rise, stronger, wiser. There's a kind of clarity that pain brings, that joy never could. When life is easy, we coast, but when life cracks us wide open, that's when we find what really matters. That's when we learn who we are. That's when we come face to face with God, not the version we talk about on Sundays, but the one who sits beside us when we're falling apart on the bathroom floor, the one who doesn't need eloquent prayers or perfect faith, the one who meets us in the raw, unfiltered moments of "I can't do this anymore." That's where God shows up, and not with thunder or lightning, but with presence, with peace, with just enough strength to take the next breath. Pain also teaches you compassion. It teaches you how to see people, how to truly understand someone else's suffering, and that's not something you can fake. That kind of empathy only comes from experience, from having your own heart broken and rebuilt, from walking through fire and learning how to help someone else walk through theirs. So when God allows pain into your life, He's not just working on you, He's preparing you to be a light for someone else, to say, "I've been there, I made it through, and so can you." I remember one woman who shared her story with me. She had gone through unimaginable, a series of tragedies that would make anyone question the goodness of God, and I asked her, "How did you keep going?" She said, "I stopped trying to make sense of it, and just started trusting that it had to mean something, that it had to become something, and it did." She now runs a foundation that supports others who've experienced similar loss. Her pain became her purpose, her suffering became a seed that bloomed into healing, not just for herself, but for so many others. That's the power of God's plan. It doesn't waste a single tear. It doesn't ignore your suffering. It redeems it. It turns ashes into beauty. And listen, this doesn't mean you have to be grateful for the pain. You don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt. What it means is that even in the hurt, you can still believe something good is being born from. Even in the ache, you can still trust that healing is coming. You can mourn what was lost and still have hope for what's ahead. So if you're in a season of pain right now, physical, emotional, spiritual, I want you to take your hand and place it over your heart and remind yourself, this pain has a purpose. This pain is not your home, it's a hallway. You are passing through it. You are not stuck in it forever. And on the other side of this pain is not just relief, it's revelation, a deeper you, a freer you, a you that knows the weight of sorrow but also the strength of joy. And when that moment comes, and it will come when the clouds part and the light returns, you'll look back at this season, not with bitterness, but with awe, because you'll see how even in the darkest moments, God was writing something beautiful, something eternal, and you'll realize perhaps for the first time, this pain didn't kill me, it crowned me. There's something I wish every child could hear when they're growing up. I wish someone would whisper in every little ear, "You are not a mistake." Because far too many of us walk into adulthood carrying the heavy burden of believing that somehow deep down we're flawed, that we're broken beyond repair, that there's something unworthy or wrong about who we are. And I want to tell you right now, that is a lie. I don't care what you were told. I don't care what mistakes you've made, what family you came from, what secrets you carry. God did not make a mistake when He made you. You were created with purpose, with beauty, with intention. You are not defective. You are divinely designed. I say this with all the conviction in my spirit because I've lived through those quiet, shame-filled years of self-doubt. I know what it feels like to look in the mirror and not love who you see. To wonder if you'll ever be enough, good enough, strong enough, worthy enough, And there were times when I believed that the things I had done or the things done to me had somehow stained my soul. But what I've learned and what I'm telling you with all the love I have is that God does not throw people away. He doesn't look at your past and disqualify your future. In fact, those cracks you carry, those broken pieces, they are the very places where God's light gets in. I used to think that in order to be useful to God or to have a purpose, I had to be clean, shiny, perfect. But then I met people who had come out of the deepest valleys, the darkest nights, the hardest battles, and I saw how their stories carried a kind of power that perfection never could. I realized that what God uses most is not your perfection, but your willingness. Your willingness to show up as you are. Your willingness to keep walking when you feel lost. Your willingness to say, yes, I'm broken, but I still believe I was made for more. You are a masterpiece in progress. And let me tell you something about masterpieces. They take time. They go through layers, they evolve. Sometimes they get messy before they get beautiful. That's what growth looks like. That's what becoming looks like. You are not behind. You're becoming. You are not ruined. You're being refined. That shame you carry, those regrets you try to hide, God already knows. And still He chooses you. Still He's calling you forward. Still He's saying, I see your wounds and I can use. Let me ask you something. What if the very thing you think disqualifies you is the very thing God plans to use? What if your pain becomes someone else's healing? What if your story is the lifeline someone else is waiting for? Because I have seen again and again that the people who've walked through the hardest fires are the ones who carry the brightest flames. They speak with wisdom. They love without judgment. They show up for others in a way only someone who's been there truly can. That's not an accident. That's divine intention. You are not just a random collection of experiences. You are not here by chance. Every thread of your life, yes, even the ugly ones, are being woven into something sacred. You may not see the full picture right now. You may only see but trust me, the artist sees the masterpiece. He sees what's being shaped in the silence. He sees the strength being formed in your surrender. He sees how every detour, every mistake, every tear has brought you closer to your truth. I know the world tries to tell you that you have to earn love, that you have to perform to be accepted. But God's love isn't like that. His plan isn't based on your performance. It's rooted in your identity. And who are you? You are His, chosen, known, loved beyond measure. Before you ever took your first breath, before you ever said your first word, God already had a purpose for you. Not just to exist, not just to survive, but to shine, to impact, to live a life that echoes beyond your years. So I want you to take a moment right here, right now, and remember this. You are still becoming. You are not done. You are a living, breathing work of art. You may have been through hell, but you're still here, still standing, still growing. And that, my friend, is proof that God's plan for you is still unfolding. Don't count yourself out before the masterpiece is revealed. Don't quit before the beauty emerges. You are not a mistake. You are a miracle. I know how it feels when life gets quiet, when you've been praying, hoping, reaching for something, some direction, some confirmation, and all you hear is silence. I know how hard it is when you feel like you're doing everything right, but nothing seems to change. You're showing up, you're trying to stay positive, you're trusting, or at least you're trying to trust. But deep down, you're wondering if God is listening at all. And that silence, that stillness, it starts to feel like abandonment. But let me speak this into your spirit from the deepest place of knowing. When you can't trace God's hand, you must trust His heart. That's a phrase I learned in a season where I felt more lost than I'd ever been. Everything around me looked fine to the world, but inside I was searching. I needed answers that wouldn't come. I needed direction that felt delayed. And for a long time I thought that maybe I had messed something up. Maybe I was being punished. But what I didn't know then, and what I thank God I understand now, is that silence is not absent. In fact, sometimes the silence is where the greatest faith is born. When we can't see the path, when we can't hear the voice, when we don't feel the presence, that's when trust becomes real. Not the trust that says, I know how this, but the trust that whispers, even if I don't, I believe there's love guiding me. That kind of faith isn't always loud. Sometimes it's as simple as getting up one more day, breathing through the anxiety and choosing to believe there is a reason behind the waiting. And let me tell you, the waiting is sacred. We live in a world that rushes everything, microwave this, fast track that, but God's timing, oh, it is deliberate, it is intentional, it is holy. There are lessons in the stillness that can't be rushed. There are parts of you that God is trying to strengthen, deepen, prepare, and He knows that if He gave you what you were asking for too soon, it might crush you instead of bless you. So He waits, and while He waits, He works quietly, invisibly, but oh so powerfully. I remember talking to a woman once who had been praying for years for her life to change. She was on the verge of giving up. She said to me, "Oprah, I just don't feel Him anymore." And I looked her in the eyes and said, "Honey, sometimes when a teacher is giving a test, they don't speak. That doesn't mean they've left the room." And her eyes filled with tears because something clicked. She wasn't being punished, she was being prepared. And that's what I want to say to you. If you're in a season right now where it feels like heaven is silent, don't lose heart. God hasn't turned His back on you. He's watching you. He's walking with you, step by unseen step. He's lining up blessings you don't even know to ask for yet. Just because you don't feel Him doesn't mean He's not at work. Some of the most transformative moments in my life were born out of that holy quiet, when I learned how to stand still, how to listen, how to let go of control, and simply be held. It takes courage to trust what you cannot see, to say I believe you love me, even when I feel alone. That's the kind of trust that changes people. That's the kind of trust that births testimonies. Because one day when the clouds part and the sun shines again, and it will, you'll look back on this silent season and realize it was never a void, it was a vessel, a space for your faith to stretch and your soul to grow strong. Let me offer you this: you don't need to have all the answers to keep moving forward. You don't need to understand every twist and turn of your journey to keep your head high. You just need to remember who's guiding you, and that even in the silence, His heart is for you, always. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is just sitting still and saying, "Even now I trust you," not because you feel like it, not because everything's perfect, but because you know that God's heart, you know that His plan is higher, and you believe that if He brought you to this place, He will carry you through it. So if you're in that place right now, if your prayers feel unanswered, if your hope feels thin, if your faith feels small, I want you to close your eyes and say this out loud: "God, I trust you. Even when I can't trace you, I believe your heart, even when I can't hear your voice." That's all you have to do. Just trust the heart behind the silence. That's where peace lives. That's where strength is built. There is a space that nobody talks about enough. A space that isn't glamorous, that doesn't make for exciting social media posts, that doesn't come with applause or recognition. It's called the waiting room. And if you've lived long enough, you know what I'm talking about. It's the season where nothing seems to be happening, where your prayers are still unanswered, your dreams are still delayed, and your heart is holding on to hope with tired, trembling hands. But here's what I've come to learn through my own seasons of waiting. The waiting room is not a punishment. It's a process. It's not where purpose goes to die. It's where the warrior in you is born. I know how hard it is to sit in that place, to feel like time is slipping away, to see others stepping into their dreams while you're still holding on to your vision, wondering if it's ever gonna come true. I know the ache of seeing people get what you've been praying for, the temptation to compare, to question, to feel forgotten. But I want you to know this: just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't, and just because it's taking longer than you expected doesn't mean God has changed His mind about you. The waiting is not wasted. In fact, it's where the most important work is done. You see, we live in a world obsessed with results, with fast wins, with instant gratification, but God doesn't work on our timeline. He's not rushing your development just to meet a deadline you created. He's not trying to make you impressive. He's making you immovable. He's building something inside you that can withstand the weight of the blessing you've been asking for. Because what good is the promise if you don't have the strength to carry it? Some of the most defining moments of my life happened when it seemed like nothing was happening. When I was in between dreams, in between seasons, in between who I used to be and who I was becoming. And I didn't realize it then, but those were the most holy moments. That space between the seed and the sprout, that's where the roots go deep. That's where character is formed. That's where faith is forged. I've seen it over and over again in the people I've interviewed, people who've overcome addiction, survived loss, rebuilt their lives after devastation. You know what they all have in common? They went through the waiting room. They sat in that quiet, uncertain place and didn't give up. They chose to believe that something was happening beneath the surface, even when they couldn't see it. And that decision to stay, to trust, to grow in the waiting, is what made them strong enough to handle the breakthrough when it finally came. Now let me say this, waiting doesn't mean doing nothing. Waiting doesn't mean you stop dreaming, stop moving, stop living. No, it means you show up in the silence. You water the seed even when you don't see anything sprouting. You keep showing up with a heart open to possibility, a soul grounded in faith. You prepare, not because you're guaranteed the outcome you want, but because you believe you're being made ready for something. And that belief, that quiet, courageous belief, that's what separates those who give up from those who break through. There's a story in every soul that's been written in the waiting. Maybe that's where you are now, waiting for healing, waiting for love, waiting for the next opportunity, waiting for clarity. And maybe you're tired, maybe you're worn thin from hope. But I want you to know that God is not ignoring your wait. He is using it. He is shaping you into the kind of person who can carry the calling, who can weather the storm, who can walk into the blessing prepared and anchored. I've learned that what God builds in the waiting room is never shallow. It's not surface level confidence or temporary strength. It's soul deep, it's rooted, it's unshakable, because when the world finally sees your bloom, they won't understand the depth of your root. They won't know about the nights you cried, the prayers you whispered, the faith you fought to hold on to, but you will know, and God will know, and that knowing, that's what will make it all worth it. So if you're in the waiting room right now, I want you to shift your perspective. Instead of asking why is this taking so long, start asking what is God teaching me right now. Instead of saying nothing is happening, try saying something is happening in me. Because the truth is, the greatest transformations happen when nobody's watching. When it's just you, your faith, and the quiet work of a God who sees everything, even the parts that feel invisible. Hold on, don't give up. Keep believing that the waiting is doing something profound, that the promise isn't dead, it's just developed, that every moment in this in-between space is preparing you for something sacred, something sustainable, something that won't fall apart under pressure. Because when you finally walk out of that waiting room, you won't just be stepping into a new season, you'll be stepping into it with the strength of a warrior. There's something deep in your soul that already knows what I'm about to say. You've felt it before, maybe in moments of stillness, maybe in the fire of adversity, that quiet whisper, that subtle strength, that knowing beyond logic. It's the truth that you were chosen. Not chosen because you're perfect, not chosen because your path has been easy, but chosen because of the very battles you've survived. Chosen for a journey that will stretch you, test you, break you wide open, and ultimately crown you with a purpose that's bigger than anything you could ever imagine. I need you to understand this. You were not placed on this earth by accident. You're not here to simply exist, to pay bills, to scroll through life passively waiting for something to change. You were chosen, chosen by God to live through your story. Yes, even the hard parts, the messy parts, the painful, confusing, isolating parts, because that story has power. That story is the key to someone else's healing. That story is proof that divine purpose can rise from human pain. When I look back at my own life, I see so many moments that felt unbearable in real time, rejections that tore me apart, losses that took the breath out of me, betrayals that left me questioning who I was and who I could trust. But I also see something else. I see how those moments were sacred. Sacred because they carved something in me that comfort never could. They made me strong. They made me tender. They made me a vessel for compassion, for wisdom, for truth. That's what being chosen looks like. It doesn't always come with glitter and praise. Sometimes it comes through fire. But fire doesn't just burn. It refines. It purifies. It reveals what's real. And if you've been through fire, if you've walked through hell and come out with your soul intact, then baby, you are not just surviving, you are becoming someone that fear can't control, that failure can't define, that darkness can't drown. That's what chosen people do. They rise, not because they're stronger than others, but because they've decided not to give up, because they've chosen to believe that if God trusted them with this life, this story, this mountain,
then he must have given them what they need to climb it. You see, the calling on your life is not casual, it is sacred, and the weight of it, that heaviness you sometimes feel, that's not punishment, that's confirmation, confirmation that you were created to carry something extraordinary, not just for your sake but for others. You've been called to break cycles, to shine light, to speak truth, to be an example of what redemption really looks like. And you don't need a title or a platform or a million followers to do that. You just need a willing heart. You just need to keep showing up, flawed, human, real, and let God use every part of your journey for good. I've sat across from people who thought they were disqualified, too damaged, too far gone, and I've watched them step into purpose anyway. I've watched them realize that the very pain they tried to hide was the bridge to their calling, that their wounds didn't make them weak, they made them relatable, they made them credible. And I've seen that in you too, in your eyes, in your resilience, in the way you keep going, even when the path is unclear. That's what chosen people do. They don't need clarity to keep walking. They just need conviction and the courage to believe that their steps are being ordered, even when they don't understand the route. Let me tell you something that will set your soul free. You don't have to feel chosen to be chosen. You might still be healing. You might still be doubting. You might be waiting on that breakthrough, that confirmation, that moment when everything finally makes sense. But purpose is not delayed just because your confidence is. God's plan is still moving, even when you're not. And your job is not to have it all figured out. Your job is to say yes, to say, "Here I am, Lord. I'm scared, but I'm willing. I'm tired, but I'm ready. I don't know what's next, but I know I'm not alone." And when you step into that kind of trust, everything changes. You begin to realize that nothing you've been through is wasted, that every scar is that every tear has watered a seed, and that seed, it's growing, slowly, steadily, silently, until one day it bursts through the soil and shows the world what survival looks like, what grace looks like, what purpose in motion looks like. So if nobody's told you lately, let me tell you now, you are chosen, you are equipped, you are anointed, not in spite of what you've been through, but because of it. And when it's your time, and it will be, you won't need to force it. You'll walk into your calling like it was always yours, because it was, because it is. And you'll look back at every battle, every valley, every lonely night, and you'll say, "Now I see, I wasn't being punished. I was being prepared. I wasn't broken. I was becoming."